Hello everyone, I'm Jay, your host at Everything Cloud Platform. Welcome to this session on Linux. Linux is a very vast topic. This is just a 1 hour session and cannot really cover everything in depth in Linux. That said, I want to ensure that the content in this session will give you enough to get started for what an SRE will need on the job. The session is packed with utilities and commands that will help shorten the learning curve you might have with getting started with Linux. So, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Here is the agenda for the session today. We'll start with looking at some commands that enable you to help yourselves. For example, man, or looking just for help around the commands that you might be using, or even finding the command names themselves. We'll look at some commands that facilitate that. Then we'll talk about a few commands that help you get the system related information, like what's the host name of your system, what kind of Linux OS are you running, and so on and so forth. So system info related commands. Then we get to some basic commands like copying the files, removing, deleting, making directories, and so on and so forth. We'll then move and talk about some commands that will help you troubleshoot in case of issues. For example, ping, just to check connectivity to your server. That's one example. You'll see more as we do the demos. So troubleshooting related commands. Find is another important command and has a lot of variations that you can use to make it very powerful for what you might be looking for the files within your Linux file system. So we'll cover that in depth. We'll then look at some commands that help you manipulate file content, for example, SED, or how do you navigate through the files using less, more, head, tail, commands like those. Grep is another very, very important or very powerful feature-rich command that comes in handy for looking for what you're wanting to look for. This comes handy for a lot of troubleshooting that you might be doing as well. We'll cover grep in depth as well. File permissions are another area that you should know how to adjust and manipulate your file permissions or change and modify your file permissions. We'll see some commands that enable you to do that. Crontab is a feature that comes inbuilt with all Linux distributions, and you can use Crontab to quickly automate some bash scripts or run something on a cron schedule. So we'll look at how do you get enabled on Crontab. And finally, we'll look at what are those top 4 Linux OS distributions. We'll talk about the Red Hat, we'll talk about Ubuntu, we'll talk about Debian and CentOS OS. Very briefly though, but we'll touch upon each one of these. So that's the agenda that we are going to be walking through. Here is how you go about finding or helping yourselves when you're using Linux terminal. So say, for example, I'm trying to get some help for the ls command. I type an ls --help and I get all the information pertaining to this command. It gives you all the switches and everything that you might be using. Like this one is one of the most popular format switches that you use with the ls command. This gives you a long listing format. And say -r, that is another popular one that reverses the order while sorting. So if I clear the screen and run the ls command in the current directory I am in, I see these 3 directories that are here. If I do an ls -l, see the output, it gives me the permissions and the owner and the root and the size, etc. Right? That gives me everything. If I do an ls -r, that gives that gives me order in reverse. You see that this order versus this order. Now this will make more sense if I do an ls -lr. You can combine the switches as well, right? So that's how you are now seeing the output sorted in the reverse order as compared to what you saw in the previous one. That's how. So //help is one way of obtaining help. The other way is there is a command called man, and you can do a man ls, and that gives you a lot of information around any command that you are using. So ls, this is telling you that this lists the directory contents. These are all the switches. You can keep hitting the space key, space bar. It will keep scrolling down the pages, and do a q for quit. So man is another command that lets you gets you to the man page for the for the command you're looking for help on. You can do a man on man too. So basically this manual, man stands for manual. This is an interface to the system reference manuals. An important point I will just call out is, typically when you do a man ls, it goes and searches in this section 1, and that's where you will find majority of your stuff. But for some reason you are looking for help on something that is a library call, you can as well include where you want to search, but ignore that for now. Just know that there are sections within this manual, and we will refer, you might come across situations where you are required to look for different sections, not just the default section number 1. So that's on man. Now what happens if you don't even know the command name, right? Say I know here I'm wanting to look for help on ls, or I want to look for help on, say, the who command. But what if I don't even remember what that command name is? So I can, there is a command called apropos, and that spells apropos, and I can do an apropos who. It gives me all the commands that are similar to who. So who and who am I, you're seeing the result here. If I do a who, that gives me that output on who is logged into this machine. Who am I just gives me my name. So that's how you go about helping yourselves as you start practicing the commands. I think knowing how you can help yourselves when you're stuck is going to help. Let's get some system information of the machine that you are in. Say if I do a uname displays Linux system information. That shows you that you are on a Linux machine. Now there are a few switches that you can look at. So uname minus a, that displays all information about Linux system. It gives you a little more information, tells you that you are on Debian machine. You can do a uname minus r, that gives you some parts of the same information. Basically, if you think about it, uname minus a gives you everything that you need. So that's one important command that you should know. Now I'll clear the screen and look at the other one, uptime. This displays since how long the system has been running. So that's telling you that this machine has been up since last 8 days. Now there are a few switches that this command supports. You can do an uptime minus p, and that gives you output in a pretty format. Another important command is hostname. Hostname, that gives you the machine name of this Linux machine that you are in. And there are a few switches that this supports too. If I do a hostname minus f, that gives you a little more information around this. If you notice, this is a VM running in gcloud, in GCP console in that project, and that is the long fqdn name of the host. You do a host name minus I, that gives you the internal IP of this machine that you are in. So some good information that you want to look at. Last is another important command that displays the list of all the users logged in and out since the file in this log file that hosts this information. So this is the information around all the users that have been logged in. And you're seeing multiple entries for me because I have been SSHing into this machine. So that's how you look for system information. Here are some basic commands, like basic foundational commands that you should know very well. Like ls we already saw, and all the switches along with the ls. Like we did not look at this ls minus la. The a switch also brings up all the hidden files if there are any. So ls is one of your basic commands. I do a clear to clear the screen. That's another basic command. I do a pwd that shows me the present working directory. Now how do you navigate between the folders? Let's look at how do you get into this. So if I want to navigate to utilities folder, I do a cd into utilities. Now if I do an ls, you are seeing the contents of the utilities folder. You do a cd dot dot, and that takes you out of that takes you back one folder up. If I do a cd dot dot, again I'm one folder up. So cd back into cd repos, I go back. Cd dash, it moves to the last working directory you were in, right? We were last in home, so we just went back there. So let's do this. If I do a cd cd in home and into say repos and into say utilities, that's where I go. And then I'll do so currently my present working directory is utilities. Say if I navigate to the root folder, now I am in root folder. Now if I do a cd dash, what happens? It takes me back to utilities, right? That's where I was last. So that's your cd dash. Then what you can do is yeah, there is one more important on cd. You want to do a cd this tilde sign that takes you to your home directory. If you look at where you are, I'll do a pwd that gives you your home j. That's my home directory here. That's the so those are variations of cd that you will need to know about. Now let's look at how do you go about making a directory, and then we'll creating files and so on and so forth. Navigate to the utilities repo, utilities folder, and we'll do some or just move here. Let's play around in repos. So let's create a directory here and see how do you go about creating a directory. So I do an mkdir and I say temp. Okay, no permissions. Maybe it's looking for root. So whenever you SSH into a Linux terminal, you will need, at times there are some commands that will need root permissions, and you can just add a sudo and mkdir temp, and that will give you the required permission that you need to be able to create the folder or run the command. Now if you see the temp folder. If you do an ls temp, yeah, of course there is nothing in there. So we just created a directory. Now if you want to create a file, let's see how do you go about creating any files here. So if I do a cd temp, do a pwd, yeah, that tells me I'm in my temp directory now. Now in this temp folder, we'll just create what we want to create. If I do a touch file 1, okay, again I'll need my root permission, so I'll do a sudo touch file 1. Now if I do an ls, it gives me that file is in here. So I do an ls or do an ll. Now ll is my alias for ls minus lrt, and you can see that here if I do an alias and grep ll. So from my alias list, it's looking for all the entries that have ll in it, and here is my alias ll that is defined as ls minus lrt. The file is just created. As you can see, the first part is the permissions assigned. This permissions is important. We'll touch upon the permissions a little bit more, but this gives you like who owns some information about the file, who owns, when was the file last modified, and so on and so forth, and the file name. That's what you're seeing here. Now how do you go about copying or removing or deleting the files? If I do a cp file 1 to file 2, it just created. All right, I'll need to get into a habit of doing a sudo here. Now if you do an ls, you see that both the files are created, right? So you now you just did a copy of these files. Now, we are being asked to do a sudo every time we are editing a file or creating a directory. To remove that need, I just did a sudo -i, and that gave me the root access. Now there is no need to add prefix sudo to every command. So what we'll do now is we'll navigate back to our temp directory that we were in, and now what we'll do is we'll add some content. And vi is the most popular editor out there that's by default available on every version of Linux distributions, and you should make yourselves familiar with the vi commands. There are little nuance associated with that. If you are new to vi, you'll find it irritating to some extent to start with, but once you know some basic commands, and there is a session out there that you can refer to for getting comfortable with vi. So we'll do a vi file 1, and we will say this is the content in file 1, and we will save it. Now, if you want to look at the file's content, cat is is one of the commands that prints out the contents of a file. So if I do a cat file 1, that gives me the contents of the file 1. If I do a cat file 2, of course I do not get anything. File 3, I do not get anything. So let's do this. Let me remove, and rm is the command for removing a file. Let me remove file 2. And asks me for a confirmation. I say yes, and the file is now deleted. Now we'll do a copy file 1 to file 2, and now if I do a cat file 2, I have the same contents as file 1 and file 2 as well. You can also rename a file. Say if I want to rename my file 2 that has this content, or let's do a rename on file 3. Currently, let's look at the contents of file 3. There is nothing in there. Let me just add something in there. If I do a date, and I can pipe this out, send this output into, say, my file 3. And now look at, just do a content, just print the contents of file 3. You see the date output that we just exported into the file 3. Now say if I want to rename the file 3 to, say, I want to rename the file 3, or before doing that, let me run a quick ls. You are seeing the file 1, 2, 3 and 4 in there. If I do an ll, you will see the timestamps as well. If I do a mv file 3 to file 5, now we have renamed file 3 as file 5. I clear the screen, I do an ll. Now you're not seeing file 3, you're seeing file 5. And in file 5, we should see the date as the content that we updated in file 3. So if I do a cat file 5, I will see the date in there. There are a few more commands that help you navigate through the contents of your file. Say if you're dealing with huge files here. So if I say syslog is one of the files that holds a lot of logs. If I do a cat on syslog, it just scrolled through tons of pages. Word count is an important command that gives you some information about the output. So if I do a pipe the output of the cat, basically what you're doing is you're printing the entire contents of the syslog file and piping that output into word count. That's the command. So that tells you that there are so many lines and so many words and so many characters in that particular file. So we're dealing with a file that has thousands of lines. So here are a few commands that will help you navigate through these files. These large files that have a lot of content. Head, for example, is one of the commands that you want to use to get the top 10 rows. So if I do a head var syslog, that just gives me the top 10 rows. And you can supply a switch, so my -n and say 20. Now it gives you the first 20 lines of that file. So 10 is the default, if you will. Right, so that is how you want to go back. You see the dates Here, that's the December 31st date. That tells you that you're looking at the top few entries in here. The same goes for the latest few entries. So if I do a tail for the same kind of command, you will get the last 10 rows. Now look at the dates in this. Yeah, these are the latest dates in this syslog file. You can as well provide the same switch here as well. If I do a -n and 20, I get the last 20 lines from here, right? We started the command here, and these are the last 20 lines that you are seeing in this file. So these two are good commands that can help navigate parts of the file. There are a couple of more commands at this point that you should look at. Less, for example, is a very feature rich. It reads the contents of a large text file, one page, one screen at a time. It allows backward and forward movement in the file. So let's see if I do a less on this. Now see this. That starts from December 31st, meaning it starts from the top. Now keep hitting your space bar. You are going down one page at a time, and you'll see that. Just notice the timestamp. You're moving forward and looking at all the time entry, the log entries from that file as you move forward. And you can as well perform some searches. Say if I do a systemd here, it just looks for everything in with systemd, and I can keep hitting N to scroll forward on the occurrences of the word you just found in there. Shift N takes you backward, N takes you down. So as simple as that. So this command was less. Similarly, you have a command called more. Does similar things. It's and less features. It just shows you the percentage here. You keep clicking your space bar and you keep scrolling down. Here are some commands that will help you troubleshoot in case of issues that you might be dealing with. Top is an important command that's a dynamic real-time view of running systems with processes and threads. A very important command that gives you a lot of good information around the processes that might be causing issues. You do hit a Q to get out of that view. Talking about the processes more, PS is the command that gives you all the processes that are running currently on your machine. Very important command. These are active processes. And then there is a command called PSAUX, and that gives you every process on the system that you have been running since long, like you are seeing the output here. There is another command called last reboot that gives you shows you the system reboot history. Then there are a couple of other commands around looking at the memory details. For example, free. If I look at free, that tells me there's a total memory which translates to, I think, 4025 MB, and the used is 141 MB, and free is 2881. You can convert this output into showing in MB, and this is telling you 3930, and the used is 138, and so on and so forth. Now the next command is DF. That's your disk space usage. This comes in very handy. One of the important devices that you are using on this Linux machine. If there are issues you are running into because of disk space, this command will help you get to the details of it. You want to look for this output in a human readable format, add that switch, and you will see this line that gives you very good information. And this is when this machine was built. This is a Debian machine. We attached a 20 gig hard disk to it, and 2.3 is used, whereas 17 gig is available. That's what df command is telling you. Now du goes into details and summarizes the disk usage of each file recursively in directories. So for to look at this, maybe let's get into cd/home and here let's do a du. Now it recursively gets into each file and each directory and each file, and gives you the disk usage of each. Now if I do a du minus sh, that summarizes in a human readable format. So you're seeing a 2.9 MB for that home directory. Now that's disk usage. A couple of other network troubleshooting commands are, say if you want to ping, you want to check the internet connectivity from this machine to the outside world, you are doing a ping google.com, for example. It's running the ICMP protocol to do a ping, and a successful response is telling you that yeah, you are able to ping google.com. And there are a couple of switches that you can apply to this ping command, and the most common one that you will see people using is ping minus c3 google.com. What that does is, instead of continuously pinging it, it just pings it for 3 times and gets done. You can add a ping minus I switch, and that adds a delay. So basically it's going to ping after every 2 seconds, and you'll have to exit out of this command as well. A couple of other commands around finding out your IP address, IPADDR, that shows the addresses assigned to all the network interfaces. Now there might be multiple network interfaces in production. As you are building complex servers, you might have multiple network interfaces, and this IPADDR gives you the details around all the network interfaces attached to a particular server. IP route gives you the table routes. All of this is troubleshooting information that might come handy. Just cover a couple of other commands. LSBLK minus A, that lists the information about all the block devices attached to the system, like SDA1. Typically you will see same kind of nomenclature. These are the devices that are attached. LSCPU displays the information about CPU architecture. Lot of information that you should just know that is available, and you will be able to use in case of issues. At times you will need to play around with dates, and there are a few commands that help you do that easily. I'll start with the calendar. Calendar gives you CAL is a handy command that gives you the calendar of the current month. You do a cal 2024, that gives you the calendar for entire year 2024. Neat, right? And you can do that for any year, for example. So that is a handy calendar for you. Now you can use some of the date commands. Let's look at the date command here. Date, that gives you Thursday, the current date basically from the system. Now there are switches that you can use to extract the parts of the date. For example, if you just want the day of the month, you have a switch %d that gives you this. And remember, we talked about obtaining help, or just do a man date and you will get a good help, or the manual page, and that gives you all the switches that can be used along with date. So you can use your man command to really see all the switches that we are going to be using. Now I'll use some obvious ones here, or most popular ones here, like we already did a %d. That gives you the month. What if you want to get the month printed? Sorry, we printed the day. What if you want to print the month? And that's your month. Here is your year. Then your hour is this, capital H. You have your minute of the hour, that's your capital M. You have second, that gives you the second, and a couple of others that gives you date printed in the format that you might need, like capital D gives you the date printed in MMDDYY. If you want to print the full date, like YYYYMMDD, then you do a capital F, and that gives you the date in YYYYMMDD format. If you want to get the day of the week, Saturday through Sunday, you do a capital A. That gives you the day of the week. And if you want to print the month from January to December, you do a B, and that gives you the month. So those are some handy commands out there to play around with date and time. Let's do some find and search here using the find command. Very powerful to navigate and find the files and folders that you might be looking for. And the syntax goes this way. If I do a find dot name and do star dot sh, I'm looking for all the bash scripts in the folder I am in. That dot represents in the current folder. Minus name switch is basically I'm saying I'm looking for a particular name. This just pulls all the names of the file, right? So that's an easy command that you can run to look for the file names that you want to look for. Now, if you want to do a case sensitive search, all you do is just include the I before the command, so that I name makes it case sensitive search. I'm looking for, say, all the files, the markdown files in here. Yeah, it gives me all the readmes and everything else that might be sitting in my repos out here. Now, say if you want to look for any files that have been modified in last few minutes, say if I want to do a find dot minus m min. Now that's the syntax, or that's the switch for looking for files modified within, say, last 45 minutes. You remember we in the last session we were looking at playing with some of these files, and those were modified in the last few minutes. That's what you are showing in the results here. That's how you can use that switch m min. You can also look for files for a particular size. So say for example, we'll play around this var log folder for this. There are a lot of log files in here that are of varying sizes. So if I do an ll on the var log, you will see that some of these files are big in size. And if we want to just sort the files based on size, meaning find the files based on size, you can do something like this. If I do a find dot size 256k, I'm looking for files that are exactly 256k. Of course, I found nothing in the folder I'm looking at. Now let's do a var log. We are looking for that folder, var log. Now I'll find some files here. Okay, so there is nothing that is matching exactly 256k. I'll say a plus sign here. Plus sign indicates now you're looking for files with size that are greater than 256k, and those are the few files that you come across. If I do a minus 256k, these are the files that are lower than 256k. That's how you go about doing a search based on size. We used K. You can very well use capital M for MB and capital G for GB for gigs. You can also look for files based on permissions. So let me list down all the files that we created in our temp folder. Now these permissions are, let me give you a quick recap of what you are seeing from permission standpoint. Typically there are like these 9 places of permissions. The first bit indicates whether that's a directory or a file, but these are the 9 spots for the permissions. So 3, 3, 3. Every set of 3 is, this is the user permission, that's the group permission, and that's the permission for others. These 3. And it's always an RWX, right? And the octal values for RWX are 4, 2, and 1 respectively. So if you think about 4, 2, and 1, there will be a combination of these values from 1 through 7. So what this RW means is this octal representation of this user permission is 6, 4 plus 2. Octal representation for this permission is just 4, right? There is no 2 or 1 here, and same goes true for here. Right now, if you want to do a find based on permission, this is how you go about finding based on permission. If you do a find dot perm and do a 664, you see not 664, sorry, 644. When you do a 644, yeah, you see your files showing up because they have the permission that matches the 644 octal representation. So you can really search based on permission levels as well. The last option that we will cover in the file in the find is you will be able to combine these options as well. So remember when we ran the file, this. Now we will combine the name option as well in this, and we'll use an AND operator here. So say if I want to search for this main log file, what I'll do is I'll add a minus name star main log star, right? So we are saying any files that are matching with that have main log in the file name, just add that. By default, this works as an AND operator. If you want to add this or make this an OR operator, so what you can do is add a minus O switch here, and that makes it an minus O or OR operator. Yeah, that works, and you get the OR operator. You can also do a NOT operator here. So for example, if I say that I want to, let's remove this minus O option. Say if I add a minus NOT here, basically you are saying this command is saying I need the name to be not matching this pattern, and size should be less than 256k. That's what your that's how you combine the switches to get to your AND or NOT operations. So that's all about find. We saw a few commands to search based on name, based on size, based on modification timestamp, based on permission, and we saw how you can combine these options to make your find very effective. Let's look at some commands that will help you compare and manipulate file content. I have a couple of sample files here for our use. For example, if I do a cat on states CSV, that is a file that holds all the US states, just the state name and the state code. All right. And there is a separate file. The other file is stocks.csv. If I do a quick stocks.csv, that is a huge file that has a lot of rows, just to get a good idea of what we have in there. If I do a word count, there are 536 rows in there. There are like 536 stock related information. If I do a quick grep on, say, Microsoft, you will see that it has this Microsoft stock related information. Just some data so that we can play around and understand some of these commands that help you compare and manipulate file content. First is SED, a very powerful command to change the file content. So we saw states.csv. Say if we want to change all the Carolina occurrences to, say, India. So I'll do something like this. I'll do an SED S, and I want to change Carolina to India and say G, and I will need to include all of this in quotes. And which file do I want to perform this operation on? The states.csv. Now, if you notice that if you just scroll up, and you will be able to find what this SED command is going to do. If I locate North India, it changed the North Carolina to North India, and there will be a South Carolina as well that got changed to South India. Now, notice that if I do a cat states.csv, my South Carolina is intact, my North Carolina is intact. So that command really just gave you an output that tells you how the file will get impacted. It actually did not really make the change because we did not include the switch that makes that happen. So if I include a switch that's called says -i, and that -i stands for in place. Now if I run this command, this is going to change the states.csv file. The reason for the error is there is a nuance with this sed command on Mac OS. Just include this, and that'll take care of the unterminated substitute and regular expression error. Now, if I do this, this actually updated the file. If I do a cat states.csv, you see what just happened. Okay, our command was trying to change from India to Carolina. That's not what we want to do. We want to do Carolina to India. And if I do this now, if I do a cat states, yeah, you see that South India showing up here, and you see the North India showing up here. So SED, that's how you use SED command to find and replace text. Now there is another important file, a command called cut. And this is especially used when you have comma delimited files like CSV files that you are dealing with. And if you look at your stock.csv, that is a comma delimited file. And we know that if I run a head first two, if I just get the first two rows in stocks.csv, I will see get the headers, right? My symbol, the stock symbol, is in the number 2 position after the comma. Cut is an important command that you can use to filter out or extract specific pieces of information that you want to, especially from the comma delimited or a file that is delimited by a specific character. So if I do something like this, cut -d, and minus d is for delimiter, and I'm saying that my delimiter is comma, and I'm going after the second field because second field is where I have the stock symbol. If I run this, I get the list of all the stock symbols segregated or extracted out. If I want to pipe this output into WC and just see that, yeah, I got a list of 536 symbols out there. If I pipe this output to sort, I get all of my output sorted as well. And similarly, you can use pipe this output say a field called unique. Currently all of these are just unique here, so you really won't see anything. One second, I think I had some. Yeah, you see that ZTS is twice and symbol is showing up twice. If you apply this to unique, you will see that ZTS and symbol are showing up only once as well. So those are other important commands that you might find handy to apply sorting and filter out the duplicates. Diff is the command used to compare two files. Now if you notice, I have a couple of files, sample files created here. If you do a cat on file 1, here are the file contents and of file 1, and this is file 2. So just notice, do a quick comparison of these two files. The first and the fourth lines are different in both of these, whereas the second and third lines are just identical. And we'll use these two files to demonstrate how comparison works. So if I do this, that is telling you that this line is only in file 1. This line, this greater than sign, is telling you that this line is only in line 2. So it's telling you that the first row is different, the fourth is different, and so on and so forth. There's a different format. You can do an sdiff file 1, file 2 as well, and that gives you a side by side comparison of the lines in there. You can also do a diff -c file 1, file 2, and that just adds a little more context on the files that have been changed. Grep is the next powerful command that works with regex kind of patterns to search for text that you might be searching in your files. We'll see some use cases here. Say if I want to do a grep for A, in states.csv. It will show you all the states that have any A in it. Let me do X in. It brings both New Mexico and Texas in it. What if I do a capital X here? So notice that all of this is case sensitive, right? Capital X just pulled Texas, whereas lowercase x pulled both New Mexico and Texas. What if I want to ignore case? You can add a minus I switch, and now your case is ignored. If I do a capital X, that was just resulting in Texas, now even that is going to result in both, because we added the switch to ignore case. Now what if we let's get to the regex kind of pattern. What if I want to look for lines starting with A? What I can do is do a, like this was the command for finding A anywhere. If you know regex a little bit, this operator is for denoting that you want to look for something starting with that letter. And now you have the states that are starting with A. Well, the output is 0. There is nothing. So notice in our states file, there is no state that is actually starting with a lowercase a. Now what we'll do is we will ignore case on this, and now you have the output. Now we have 4 states that are starting with A. Some more use cases of grep. Say if I want to grep all the states that are ending in A. Now the reason I did that cut minus D is I just want to segregate the state name and ignore that state code from there. So we are just getting the state name, and on that we are applying the grep for all the lines that are ending in A. If I run this, I get all the state names that are ending in A. egrep is another form of the grep command that you should be using, because as you apply more complicated regex patterns, egrep just works better with those regex patterns. So at this point we'll start using egrep and look for some more complicated cases like this one. So if I am, say, looking for all these states that have at least one n in it, I run this command and I get all the states that have at least n. So notice that Minnesota is showing up as well, that has 2 n's, and the other states that have n is showing up. Texas is not showing up, it does not have an n in it. So that's one example of how you apply some regex patterns. Another example could be, I am now trying to find, I do a clear, I'm trying to find the states with n 2 or more times. Now at this point I'm just the result is narrowed down to just these 4 states, because these have double entries for n. A couple of examples of how you can apply the OR criteria. Now you're trying to look for states that have either AR or MI in it. So you come across these 3 states that have either AR, that is in Delaware, or MI. So you'll see MI in here and AR in Maryland too. So you can apply your I criteria. There is make it a little more complicated, like using this example. That example is looking for states with MA or MI, and this S question mark is basically S is optional, and in the second criteria the N is optional. So this will result a few more states that are matching with that condition. Now the last example in here would be one other complicated example like this one. Now this is looking for states with a question mark n with a question mark replaced with any characters between A to Z. So if I look at this, so you got only main here that has an A and N and any character in here. So if I look for, say, if I reduce this down to, say, Z, now this won't result in anything, because it's looking for an A and N, and there should be a Z in between, which is not the case. So that's grep. A lot of use cases that we saw where you'll find it handy if you practice this, and keep this in your back pocket as you are working in Linux. Let's play a little bit with the file permissions. We saw these notation octal values before. Like first three are user, this is for group, and this is for others. And the octal values are 4 for read, 2 for write, and 1 for the execution, that is X. So currently you see that this has this permission, in the other words, can be read as 644. There is a command called umask. If you look at the last three of this, that is 022. So if you subtract those three characters with three numbers from 6, you get a 644. So by default, basically this umask setting or configuration is telling Linux kernel that any new file that gets created has default permissions like this, default permission set of 644, and that is derived from umask. And you can modify the umask settings, but not covering that part right here. Now, how do you go about changing the permissions? Say if I want to change the permission for file 4, I want to add say execution permission. So if I do a chmod u plus x, and then the file 4 name, we just modified the permission. If I do an ll now, you see that x showing up for user. If I do a g plus write on the file 4, you will see a write showing up here now for file 4. Now if I do an ll, you see that permission just got added. Similarly, you can just take away the permissions as well. If I just do a g minus w, now if I do an ll, that w permission is gone. The other way of modifying the permissions is, say for example, this one, if you look at the octal representation, this one is 7 now, right? This is 7, this is 4, this is 4, this is 744. What if you want to change it back to 644? I can apply a chmod 644 to file 4, and that will take the permission back to where it was. This comes in really handy when you are really required to change the file permissions. For example, say if you have a test script, and when you just created the test script bash script file, there are no execution permissions on this one. Let's add some quick code in this to say bin bash, and say I'm just saying the command is just date. Right, this is going to print from the date if I run this command. Now if I want to just run this test script, I'll not be able to run, of course, because permission denied, right? This is not an executable. So I want to be able to add the execution permission, and for that we will need to make this 744, right? Or basically add the permission u plus x to test script. Now if you look at the ll, you will see that the execution permission has been added. And now if I just run this, the script runs and it prints the date from the script. So this was a quick on how you use chmod to play around with the file permissions as you need. Crontab is another quick utility that is available to you on Linux systems that comes very handy with automating some of few mundane tasks. And if you are working as an SRE, toil is your enemy really, and Crontab comes handy to kill such mundane tasks or automate any quick task. What you can do is you can schedule your bash scripts running there, or any bash commands you can run via Crontab on a scheduled basis. So if you do a Crontab minus E minus L gives you what is already scheduled. So there is a sample Crontab that I'll already have. Basically just every minute. Now this format, if you just follow Crontab Guru, you'll be able to follow look at how to play around with these values to schedule per your requirement, like every minute or every hour or nth minute after this hour or this day of week, and so on and so forth. You'll be able to play around with that. This one is currently scheduled for every minute, and this entry is already in there, and if I want to edit, I will do a Crontab -e, and I'll use this VI editor to really change the message as I want to. Currently I do not want to, and the output that you can see, and if I do a mail, you see all of these entries. These are coming from that Crontab job that is indeed running from our Crontab listing. Here is a quick piece of information on the Linux OS distributions and the package managers that they support. This is important piece of information. If you're new to Linux, you might find some of this complicated to start with, but I'll just simplify this for you. There are these four are really very popular Linux OS distributions that you will come across most often. There is this page out there with some of the some information around these operating systems that you will be able to use as well. But I'll just summarize this for you. CentOS, this is a community-driven free software effort focused around the goal for providing a rich base platform for open source communities. Package manager supported here is DNF and Yum. Red Hat Enterprise Linux for this as well. The package manager is DNF and Yum. We are using Debian. Everything that you saw in most of the demos that we did is Debian machine. You see this Debian, and Debian is the default. If you go about creating a VM instance in GCE, in GCP, Debian is the default machine that shows up. And then there is Ubuntu as well. The package manager for Debian and Ubuntu is apt. Package manager for Red Hat and CentOS are DNF and Yum. That's a quick on Linux OS distributions. All right, that was quite a demo. So here's the recap of what we did. We started with looking at some commands that enable you to help yourselves. Then we looked at some commands that enable you to find the system information. We looked at some basic commands like copying files, deleting directories, creating files, and so on and so forth. We looked at some troubleshooting related commands. We looked at find in depth, find using the name or based on size or based on permission, and so on and so forth. We looked at some commands that help manipulate file content and navigate through the file content. We looked at Grep in depth and the variations of Grep. We looked at how do you go about changing and modifying file permissions. We looked at how do you go about looking at the Crontab schedule and building a Crontab schedule. And then finally, we talked about the four popular Linux OS distributions: CentOS, Debian, Red Hat, and Ubuntu. So that's the recap. Well, that brings us to the end of this video on Linux. If you like the content, please do subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon to get notifications when new videos are posted. If you're genuinely interested in learning all the foundational skills we have been looking at everything cloud platform, stick around and follow along all the videos posted. I'm sure you had a wonderful time, and I will see you in the next session.